You know, it can be really hard to save money. And as you've probably heard, inflation's on the rise. Things are getting more expensive. So today, we're gonna be talking about how you can save money. We're actually gonna be looking at some stuff that I've done. So my story, I'm an entrepreneur and I started my own thing and I cut back my expenses to almost nothing. And so a lot of this is gonna come from personal experience of how to cut your expenses in good times, bad times, and all the time to maximize the amount of money in your bank account, to maximize the money that you're actually earning. So let's get started on how you can save more money and increase your wealth as you grow older. Let's start off with cashback. You may have seen another video where we talk about how to take advantage of credit cards. This is a really good way to reduce your expenses. So a lot of credit cards offer at least 1% cashback. Discover's the one that made it really popular. Theirs is a minimum of 1%. So 1% cashback, let's say you spend $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year, that's $120 a year. You double that, $2,000 a month is $240 a year. That's not chump change. That will probably buy groceries for a week, depending how big your family is. But that is a lot of money that you can be saving. Now, side note, make sure that you're maximizing where you're getting your cash back. So like, for example, Discover has categories that change throughout the year. Make sure you're maximizing that. Some credit cards, like if you go out to eat a lot, you may want to get a credit card that focuses on that. But use those credit cards to your advantage. If your credit's not super good, just get the best card that you can for your maximum amount of returns, and then be ready to go to another credit card as you get older and as your credit builds a little bit. So, but make sure you take advantage of cashback because it's free money. Why not use it? Side note though, make sure you pay your balance off at the end of the month. Otherwise you're paying interest and you're not doing yourself any good. So don't spend anything that you don't have. Our second tip, think about what you're gonna purchase. As a general rule, anything that's a large purchase, I have two rules. One, I always ask my wife, happy wife, happy life. Good theory to go by. But two, I always think about it for at least a day. I always wanna sleep on it. If it's a major purchase, if I really need it, I will still think that tomorrow. What the worst thing is if you go and you buy something and then you come home, it's nice and new, and then you sleep on it, and then you're like, oh crap, I didn't want to buy that. It's a little harder to return it versus going, looking at it, coming home, sleeping on it, and then deciding not to buy it because you haven't actually made the purchase and a legal obligation to buy that product at that time. As you've probably heard, I worked in the car business for 5 years. I've seen a lot of people walk into a dealership kind of casually looking and walking out with a car. I'm sure some of them regret it, but at that point it's too late. You can't take the car back usually. It's starting to change in some places, but typically you can't take the car back. Another topic that kind of goes along with this that I have is make sure that you think about anything before you make a long-term commitment. I worked in collections for a long time. One of the most interesting cases we would have would be a fitness center. People would come in January, they want to get fit, they would sign a 3-year contract. And then, you know, they go 2 months and they say, forget it, I'm done, I don't want to go to the gym anymore. But they're locked in for 3 years. And now they have to face that collections because they signed a 3-year contract. So anything that's going to be a long-term contract, think about it overnight before you sign it to make sure it's really something that you want. Our third tip is find alternatives to your purchases. I know some people really love brands. I don't care, I never have cared, but some people love brands. This can be dangerous and this can be really expensive. Let's say you always like to get a drink, a coffee drink on your way to work. Think about stopping at Starbucks. How expensive is that coffee? Is that really needed? When you could go to Dunkin' Donuts, you can go to 7-Eleven, you can go to, convenience stores in general, or you can just make it at home. Any of those will be cheaper than going to the most expensive brand that really carries that name, rather than really being a whole lot different. Some people may disagree with me. I'm not a coffee drinker, so don't ask. But my wife, for example, loves to drink coffee. She makes it at home. She makes these really fancy drinks, and she likes them better than she does at the store because she knows what's being put into them. So they're healthier, and it's a heck of a lot cheaper. The other thing to consider is whenever you're making general purchases. So like whenever I go shopping, I shop almost exclusively at Aldi's for groceries. Aldi's is amazingly cheap, and I don't need the Kellogg's brand of cereal. I can buy the Aldi's brand. Honestly, sometimes they taste better than the name brand that is way more expensive anyway. But I'm saving a ton of money by not spending for those name brands. Or this can go for anything. You can look at cell phones. There's some really good cell phones that aren't so expensive. And there may be some features on the expensive one you don't need. This can go for clothes, this can go for cars. You don't need the fancy name brand of car. I drive a Chevy. Who cares? I could drive something nicer, but it works great and It saves me a ton of money over a Mercedes. So make sure you take that into account, especially whenever you're trying to save. At some point, whenever you have a ton of money, it doesn't matter, you have a ton of disposable income. But save as early as you can so you can maximize your wealth. Fourth, buy things that retain value. Maybe they don't lose as fast a value, or maybe they grow in value. Let's start with cars. Almost everybody, depending what part of the country you live in, needs a car. Think about what that car is going to be worth at the end of its life. So I've owned a bunch of cars, and I've owned some really cool cars, and I've owned some really normal cars. The cars that retain their value the most are the most boring, basic cars that you see everywhere. Those are the cars that have a lot of demand for them when you go to sell them, and so that keeps the value up. So, you know, a Toyota Camry, Toyota Corolla, Honda Civic, Honda Accord, Chevy Silverado, Ford F-150, cars like that that you see everywhere. There's a ton of those out there. Those types of assets, they'll still lose value because they're a car, but they won't lose it as quickly as this really cool niche car that nobody is really looking for, because you're gonna have to look really hard to find the right buyer for this car. So let's take it down to something that's a little bit cheaper. So for example, my videographer and editor, Eduardo, he loves to buy camera equipment. That's a great thing. Hope you like the way it looks. But that camera equipment that he buys is not the cheapest in town, but it does retain its value because it is the best, and other videographers and photographers are looking for equipment like that. And so that will keep the value up. If you buy a no-name brand, it's honestly not going to be worth anything at the end of the day because the other professionals aren't looking for that type of product. So keep that in mind, that you want to buy the assets that will retain value. At the end of the day, your real goal should be to own a lot of assets that retain value and gain value and produce money as you go along. So I own a bunch of rent houses. Those are excellent assets because they gain value as the market appreciates, and they're producing income for me on a monthly basis. So that's a goal to work towards. Work towards owning assets. If you own enough assets, those assets will pay you a dividend, and then you can live off that dividend. That's the ultimate retirement plan. You're not waiting on the government or a 401k to pay you money. You own assets. That is your retirement plan. Number 5, energy efficiency. We're not going to get into the political aspects of green energy and stuff. What we want to talk about today is how this can save you money. So for example, I live in a house that's 2,000 square feet and I have 2 electric cars, but my electric bill is some of the lowest in the entire neighborhood. How is that possible? Well, first, I have a smart thermostat, and when I'm not home, it's not running. I don't need a nice cool house for no one to be there. Same thing in the winter. I don't need a nice warm house. I just need it to be there, and I don't need anything to get damaged. So I have it set at a fairly high temperature in the summer and a fairly low temperature in the winter, just enough to keep stuff from getting damaged if I'm gone for long enough. It notices when I'm coming home, it fires back up, it's nice and cooler, nice and warm whenever I get home. So make sure that you are turning off those utilities whenever you're not using them. The other thing that you can do is make sure you have your air conditioner serviced, your heater serviced, your filters changed, have all of that checked out to make sure that it's working at peak efficiency. Most utilities will actually do this for free. You'll have to just call your utility provider and see if they offer that program. Some of them will also put insulation in your attic. That's a big benefit. The more insulation you have, the less of that cool or warm air is going to escape out whenever you're running that air conditioner or the heater. So that can save you a whole lot of money. The other thing you can do is think about your car. Make sure that you're taking care of your car. Make sure you have the oil changed, make sure that you have everything taken care of, and then don't drive it like a crazy person. Drive it very efficiently. Overall, these little things can add up to big savings at the end of the day. I hope that you've learned something today from these 5 tips that we've given you. There's a lot more tips that we could give, but we'd be here all day long teaching those. So take these into consideration. These can actually end up saving you a lot of money. The real goal at the end of the day, like I said, is to own assets that produce income. So if you save the money today, don't just squander it away. Save it and then use it to buy an asset that produces that income so you can retire the way that you want to. If you've enjoyed this video, take a second to like, subscribe, comment below. We would love to hear from you. I'm Brian Mullins. Thank you and have a good day.